All right, everybody. Congratulations for making it this far. We're going to move on to fundamental number 11.
Yes.
Which is an interesting fundamental.
Because this has absolutely nothing to do with the actual physicality of singing.
Yeah.
This is a bonus.
But the next few fundamentals we're going to talk about are still super, super important.
Yeah.
And this one, we want to talk about some basics with performance and performing.
Yeah, this is a can of worms. We could do a whole product on and just a bunch of modules on performing itself and deep diving into performing. Maybe someday we'll do that. But for now, we're just going to spend a few minutes just glancing over some of the fundamentals of performing and how that kind of plays into all of the singing that we're doing. So this is where we take it to the next level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been spending all this time working on your voice, right? You're getting all these things established with your voice, and then it's time to start using your voice, right? You've been working on it for a reason, and the reason you've been working on it is so that way you can sing for other people.
And share it. Yeah, it's all about sharing your gift. And performing is way more than just moving on stage and having some blocking to move from here to there and having jazz hands, even though we like jazz hands occasionally. It's a lot more than that. It's developing your unique performing style.
Now, this is kind of interesting because everybody falls into their groove, right? And if you go back and watch music videos and things like that, or live performances, music videos are always staged, so that kind of has a theatrical aspect to it.
Absolutely.
But if you go and watch like live performances, concerts, things like that, you really get a sense and a feel for what people's actual performance style is.
Yeah.
How do you find that? Because when I see people get up on stage and perform for the first time, this is usually how it goes. They drop their hands down and they just stand in front of the microphone and they're just hanging on for dear life.
Or they death grip the microphone. Their hands are like white.
Yeah. So
white knuckles.
So with that, kind of what are you trying to establish and how do you get that to come about?
I think the number one thing that you can start thinking about when you get on stage, other than just handling yourself on stage, which we're actually going to talk about in the tip, you guys. We're going to go over some basic stage stuff so that you're not walking up and not knowing how to handle yourself at all. But I think this first step to having a great performance is understanding how to connect to your song. It's not just this fancy presentation. It's an actual act of sharing something. And so if you don't understand your song fully and fully connect to that song and it doesn't mean something to you, it's going to be very difficult for you to have an authentic, vulnerable performance. And I think that's why performing is so hard for people, because you have to literally open your soul to your audience and share energy with them and share who you are and share your honesty and your truth. And that's why you see people death grip a microphone. That's why you see people pace and rock back and forth and stand like a board on stage, because they want to sing for people, but opening that gateway to their heart is very, very difficult to do. And being that vulnerable, like there's nothing else like it. There will be no other time in your life that you are that splayed open for public and for people in an audience to just watch you and share with you. But the thing that's so cool about that is that if you can connect to that song and you can be vulnerable on stage and you can open yourself up to that, then you can create an incredible connection with your audience. And then you reciprocate energy and you share something very beautiful. The whole reason you have an audience is that they're coming there to feel something. They're coming there to be entertained. And if you can't open your soul to them, they will not reciprocate that energy to you. And so I think that's the first thing that you have to understand beyond, this is how I hold my microphone, this is where I'm going to move on the stage, this is where I'm going to smile. Like, you can stage things like that, but to just purely authentically get up on stage, it starts with connecting to your song, opening yourself up to be vulnerable, and then connecting with your audience.
A huge part, we've talked about this quite a bit, but a huge part of having a great performance is being confident in your performance, feeling confident up on stage, right? Because if you don't feel confident, then the audience will feel that uncomfortableness, right? And everybody's kind of cringing in their seats or wherever you're at, right? People are like, oh, they can feel that insecurity.
It's because the interesting thing is once you put yourself on stage, Once you are on that elevated plane, you're standing on an actual higher ground than everyone else in the room. You are elevated. You're speaking into a microphone, all this stuff. They have given you permission to control all of the energy in the room. Just think about that for a second. They're sitting below you. And even if you aren't on a stage, but you're standing and they're sitting, you are still elevated. Or even if your stage is only 6 inches high, guess what? You're still an elevated person in the room. They have decided to give you permission to lead. They give you permission to control the energy. So you are the most powerful person in the room. The thing that comes with that is if you, like Mike was saying, if you feel insecure, your audience is going to feel whatever you feel because they are completely open to your energy. So if you feel insecure, your audience is going to feel insecure for you. They're going to worry for you, right? If you are pacing and you look nervous, your audience is going to feel like they need to pace and feel nervous for you. And then they're just going to sit there and hope for you. Most people aren't going to sit in the audience to just like throw tomatoes. That's not what people do. People come to sit in your audience to cheer you on. They hope you succeed. So when they see that you're nervous, when they see that you're not feeling safe, they're all on the stage or in the audience going, "Oh, I hope that he does really good." And they're just holding on for you. But they also feel very insecure because you do. Versus if you step foot on stage and you're extremely confident and you're feeling yourself, everyone's going to be feeling that with you. And it's an invitation to your audience to share in that energy. And those are the kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You can get up there and be super chill and everyone's going to be like, "Oh yeah, this is chill." And it's just going to feel that way. So yes, you have to be very mindful of your energy on stage. And that confidence, it comes from getting reps in your performing. Just performing a ton. Guys, unfortunately, the way you have to get over it is just do it a lot, right? Do it a lot, do it a lot, do it a lot. Whether it's a live video on your Instagram or you're going to an open mic or you're performing for your family in the front room or you're singing at church, like whatever you're doing, reps, reps, reps. But the other key to having a lot of confidence on stage is knowing that you can trust your voice. If you know that your voice is going to work for you every single time, then you're not going to be half as afraid. Right? Because you know that you're not going to mess up. You know it's going to be there. And that's why we're talking about performance at the very end, because if you've built your voice to be balanced and strong and it's functioning and it feels great and it's working and everything's going well for you, then when you get on that stage, you are not going to be afraid. You know? So that's my whole thing to wrap that all together.
And that's great. One thing that I think is to help build that confidence. Now, granted, you have to actually get up on stage to get comfortable being on stage.
Yes.
But some things you can do beforehand to help get your unique style down, right? Mm-hmm. Is to actually practice, right? To try different
performing,
things. So when I think about it, like everybody kind of talks about mirror work, right? Like practice in front of the mirror. Mm-hmm. And what I think that allows you to do is to try and move a certain way, to try and stand a certain way, to try and just find your vibe. So it's kind of like your style with your clothes, right? You're going to try something on and you look in the mirror and you go, that's not right for me, right? So I think you can try out some of these things, try moving certain ways, and find your own vibe, find what fits you. Because once you find that, what naturally occurs to you, you're going to feel more confident in it anyways.
Well, I love that you bring that up because people think that they can just visualize what they want their performance to be. And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be so great. It's going to be so great." But they don't actually ever practice it physically. And then they get on the stage and they don't do any of it.
Right.
Because you're going to perform however you practice. So if you don't practice full out exactly how you want it to be on the stage, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, guys. You're going to get up there and be like, "I was going to take the microphone out of the stand and like hold it up and do all this cool stuff and bend over." And he's like, "Nope, I just stood there." Because if you don't actually practice that performance, you're not going to do it. You're going to perform the way you practice.
Right.
Period. So I love this idea of mirror work, standing in front of a mirror. And if your vision for your performance is to have a mic stand and be using the mic stand as a prop and doing all this stuff, you better be doing that in front of a mirror and watching yourself do it, because like he said, you're going to see what works and what doesn't work very, very quickly. And then the other thing you could do is film yourself. Get comfortable filming yourself and watching it and getting feedback from yourself about, is that the way I wanted it to look? But if you don't practice full out, you will not perform full out. We have a great example of this. When I first started getting very serious with my band about doing gigs and stuff, and we had this great practice room. And when we would practice, I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what this is going to look like at the show. Mm-hmm. And I would just kind of stand there and sing half voice and not put a ton of energy into it. And then when I got on stage, one of two things would happen. I'd either perform really flat and it was just like low energy, or I would go so over the top to compensate that I would blow my voice out because I was just way overdoing it, because I didn't actually dial in my level when I was practicing. So you were the one that's like, hey, you got to practice full out to figure this out.
Right.
Because you were watching us practice.
Practice like you're going to perform it.
Yes.
Practice like you are performing it for somebody.
Absolutely. It's like somebody who does sprinting at a very athletic level, and either Olympics or college or even high school level, and they sprint. And it's like, okay, so for my practice, I'm just going to run around the track. We're just going to jog a couple times. And then I'm going to go to the race and sprint.
And there's times for that where you're practicing something at a slower speed or a slower intensity,
right,
or lower intensity, just to kind of get things dialed in, to work things out.
Sure.
Without having to go full all the time. But you need to get in those reps where it is 100%.
Yeah, because if you never get the sprint in at all in your practice, then how is that going to turn out for you when you actually go to the race?
Practice is fundamental 11.5, right? Like 11 and a half, we're going to say. Because practicing is so important. It's so underestimated. It's so underappreciated in the vocal world. Because people think, okay, I just sing, so I don't need to practice.
I talk so I can sing.
And it's just silly to me, because you're building all this coordination. You're learning all these things. Practice for the level that you want to reach. If you have any aspirations of becoming a professional singer, you better be practicing like crazy. Your vocal technique should become just second nature, right? It's muscle memory at that point. And then when you perform or practice your performing, that's when you learn how to get those like levels specifically, right? So even for you, in your example, you'd practiced and done vocal lessons for 20 years, right? Ish. Yeah. 15 to 20 years before you really got into it with your band. And at that stage, your vocal technique was under control.
Yeah, it was. It was great.
So at that point, you'd built this muscle memory for technique, but then you get into the atmosphere of performing and you get so much energy. And granted, your band was a little more rock or a lot more rock.
A lot more rock.
And so you just get that energy going up on stage. It wasn't like doing an acoustic set or open mic or something like that. So you got to get a feel for what you're actually going to be doing on stage. So that way the muscle memory of performance and the muscle memory of technique are both able to kick in without you even thinking about it.
Exactly. Yep. It's a beautiful dance. And so I think we've covered how important it is to practice. We've covered all these different little elements underlying with performing and some things to start considering with your performing. Again, we're just kind of scratching the surface with this. We're just kind of brushing over it. Yeah. Right? Just barely little nicks of surface. We're going to talk about some good elements for performing with our tips and really dive in deep. We actually have a ton of tips for you guys that we're going to brush over real quick that you can start working on with your performance. But I love the where we're at with this right now. So let's just go over to our tips.
All right.
The first tip I want to give you about performing is perform a lot. I know that there's going to be a lot of things that we can go over with how to make your performance better and how to make you more comfortable on stage and how to connect with the song more and all of that. But number one, just get yourself out there. Perform as much as possible, whether it's in your living room, at an open mic, for a school performance, no matter what it is. Church is a great opportunity. Just get yourself in front of people, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get, the more dialed in you're going to get. So those performing opportunities are number one. Even if that performing opportunity is just going live on Instagram or Facebook, creating videos for YouTube, that's also going to help you. But we want to get you up in front of audiences as much as possible. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is, everyone always is throwing this idea out of connecting to the audience, connecting to the song. What does that even mean? And this is really a can of worms. So I just want to scratch the surface with you. The whole point of performing is to have a connection with your audience. It's to give them something. They're coming to watch a show. They're coming to feel something from you, to be entertained. But the thing I want you to consider is that connecting with the audience comes second. The first and foremost, most important thing for you to do is to connect with your song. And that means really have great song choices. Make sure you're picking things that really resonate with you. We kind of already talked about that. Make sure that songs mean something to you. It's not just, hey, I sound good singing this, or hey, I think I kind of like this melody line. Understand what you're actually saying. Have you ever stopped to consider what the lyrics are actually about? How do they make you feel? Because if they make you deeply feel something, then you are going to make your audience deeply feel something. When you are standing on the stage, you have the most power in a room. You control all of the emotion in the room. And consider this, a stage is elevated. That means when we walk in the room and you're standing up there, we have given you permission to be the most important person in the room. Everyone's sitting below you, looking up at you to feel something. So what I want you to consider is everything you feel, everything you put out is what the audience is going to give back to you. They are going to receive that energy from you and then reciprocate it. So if you're nervous, if you're pacing, if you're doubting yourself, if you don't really understand what you're singing about, then that's how the audience is going to feel too. If you don't understand the words to your song, they're not going to understand the words to your song. But if you deeply resonate with whatever you're singing, whether it's partying and having fun or talking about losing someone, doesn't matter where it is on the spectrum. If that means something to you, if that resonates with you, then it's going to resonate with your audience. And that's why the most important thing in performing is connecting to your song. That's what that means. Fully encompassing what it's about, understanding it, feeling it, allowing yourself to feel the vulnerability in that moment, and then share that with your audience. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is actually just a technical tip, microphone technique. And the reason I want to bring this up is because so many singers get this wrong. When I was on tour with my band and we were playing big shows and we were opening for really cool, awesome bands, I was always so astounded at how little people use their microphone well. So this is an SM48 microphone. SM48s and 58s are my absolute favorite by sure. So I'm going to show you something. This is a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones are made for the stage because they are made to only pick up the instrument or voice they are miking. This is an actual vocal mic. This is what it looks like on the inside. Okay. So the thing that's interesting about this is the microphone itself isn't in the side of the microphone. It's just directly in the top. If I turn it, you can kind of see that. This is a directional microphone. So if I talk into the side of the microphone, it's actually not going to pick up my voice. It'll sound really muffled. It's directional because it's made to point directly into your voice to catch the sound waves. This mesh just protects it. So if you talk into the side of it or if you hold it below your chin, it's going to really destroy the sound. This is also made to just pick up your voice and not any instrumentation or speakers on stage. So with every inch that you move away from the microphone, you're going to lose like 50% of the sound. So that's why you get back this far and then all of a sudden the sound is gone, or it's very, very little. The problem with that is that sound person can only turn it up so loud before we're getting feedback in the speakers. And most of the time, if you can't hear a singer on stage, it's their own fault. And so that's why I really want to talk to you about this. A condenser microphone is a microphone we use in a recording studio, and that's going to pick up you brushing the side of your pants or literally dropping a pin, right? So I'm going to take my microphone out and show you a couple things. And this is also just one of these guys. I can take this fancy little cover off. And here we are. So directionally, I'm going straight into the microphone. Here's an interesting thing I'm going to show you. If I lower the microphone, it picks up all the low tones in my voice. You can hear that change. And also, it's not as loud. Okay, here's all my center. It's pointing straight into my mouth. You can hear it's picking up all the full color of my voice. And then I'm going to hold it above my voice, and it's picking up all of the high tones. Can you hear that change? It sounds higher up here. It sounds lower down here. And then it sounds normal right here. I have all the color. So you also heard that there's a change in the volume of my voice as well. So even that slight change of dropping it down or raising it up does change the volume quite a bit. Now here's the other thing. I'm going to move it back like I said. If it's not your microphone and you're a germaphobe, don't touch your lips to it. I mean, I don't like doing that on public microphones, but ideally your lips are touching the microphone, okay? So if it's your own, eat it. If not, you can be a finger width away, and that's ideal, okay? So now watch this. As I move the microphone back, I'm gradually losing sound, and by the time I get here, it's almost gone. So that's why it's so important to keep that microphone so close to your mouth, not angled this way or this way. We're not ice cream cone. We're hot dog. Okay? So that's a fun way to remember it. Always make sure that you're eating it like a hot dog, not an ice cream cone. Okay? So that's basic microphone technique, you guys. And it's the same, especially if it's in a microphone holder. It's really easy to get really far away from the microphone. Make sure that you're staying right up on that mic so that we don't lose a second of your performance. The other thing we see people do a lot if they're playing an instrument, if they look at their hands, all of a sudden we lose the voice as soon as they look away. You can instantly hear that change. And I'm still close to the mic. It's just that directionally, remember the microphone is directional. It has to be here. So if you have to look at your hands, your eyes are tracking down, but your mouth is staying glued to that microphone. Same thing with the piano or any other instrument that you might be playing while you are singing. So just keep that in mind as a technical tip. I also recommend don't take other people's microphones apart. They will not like it. But if it's your own, go ahead, take that top off, and take a look at what is inside your microphone.
We hope you guys are enjoying the Fundamentals of Singing video series here on YouTube. If you guys want more free resources on how we help our artists here at Invictivox, please check out the Invictivox Radio podcast on YouTube or any major podcast platform.